Are you a believer, Guy?
Hi, Mel.
Hello.
No, I'm a believer
Monday.
in a lot of things. I was just contemplating
In this
a lot
rally.
of things. No, I'm not. And, we had a conversation last week. We thought it got down to levels where theoretically technical support, you should see a bounce within this sort of counter-trend rally. We're seeing it now. If you want to do the math and play that game, I think 58.25 makes a lot of sense. That's a 50% retracement of the all-time high we saw in February and this recent low of 55.05. So the rally makes sense. I think, again, probably oversold conditions, but I think it's going to be somewhat short-lived. I could see a day tomorrow where we open on the highs and close on the lows.
Yeah, and the other thing is it doesn't really clear up the uncertainty that was causing the downward volatility over the last month or so. I mean, this is the kind of on again, off again. I mean, we've seen this before. We were Trump 1.0. We saw, we're going to do this. By the way, this is not something he ran on. I mean, this was not, a reason that he got elected. This wasn't one of the main reasons. And so I just find it really interesting that this is one of the things that's kind of causing, not just on Wall Street, but on Main Street, right? And so when we get to earnings season, really in a few weeks, which is pretty interesting, I think we're going to see that Q1 activity was probably slower than we would have expected, and the guidance for Q2 is not going to be particularly great. So you have to start asking yourself, is that if we don't get any clarity sometime soon, this volatility is going to be here to stay, and it's probably not doing anybody any favors when you think about the economy coming into the year. It was pretty decent.
I mean, saying that the tariffs are going to be softer, that's nice, but the uncertainty is still there. If you're a CEO, you still don't know how to plan. You don't really know what the tariff situation will be. And I mean, it might even be worse. Isn't it better to just know and then you can deal with what you know as opposed to being pushed around constantly?
Markets hate uncertainty more than they hate bad news. The scepter of bad news is well worse. So I agree with that. Although, I mean, there was not maximum fear, but a lot of fear. A lot of fear already in. So to have them come back a little bit is great. Interesting. We saw that data this morning, pretty hot, in a different market where, on a different day where we weren't talking about maybe the tariffs not being as bad. I think what that did to interest rates may have actually had the market go south, right? Because I think this sort of those hot numbers take the Fed out of the equation a little bit more, I think. So, I mean, it was a nice bounce, right to your point. I mean, it's not shocking at all. We really were oversold. I'm always long, so a day like today is great, but I've had 17 bad days, so, whatever. We'd act back to, maybe going down.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. I do think the tariff thing is important, though. But I think that we're still going to see companies, when they come out, give conservative guidance.
Yeah.
I mean, I would answer just through the lens of the markets. If you think that that the Trump put, which I thought was around 5,200 on the S&P, if the strike price is now 56, it gives markets a reason to say, I mean, and this is what markets do, whether it's the Fed, whether it's the administration saying there's a level in which we'll have so much pain, even though they're telling us to just endure a little pain. This is kind of what it felt like. And everyone is documenting or identifying the oversold conditions we had. We all know where RSI's got, even on the S&P as an index, kind of mid last week. We had a quad witch on Friday. I mean, it's set up for good news to take markets a lot higher, especially the biggest stocks in the world, which didn't necessarily go crazy other than if you look at what semis did. But it tradable bounce and whatnot, and I know we're going to have a great conversation with Mike Wilson in a second, but let's just be clear. The S&P has already rallied over 5% off of that intraday low. So do you think we're going to have a 10% move in the S&P? And if you do, half of it's done. And if you were selling on the day that actually it turned around, you're not feeling so great. So I don't know that the fundamentals have changed at all. That's why it'll be interesting to hear what some of the strategists have to say.